with that population explosion, what has happened to rents in Peterborough in the last few years?
OK, so 2016, if I went on to Rightmove and I just had a look at our sort of bread and butter stock, which would be little three-beds, ex-council, sort of Bretton, Ortons, those kinds of areas, you'd be looking at a rent of maybe $550 a month. And there would be about 25 of those available. Fast forward this morning, I had a look, there were 5, and you're looking at about £1,000 a month. Just under £1,000 a month.
So rents have virtually doubled.
Almost doubled since 16.
Since the referendum, actually, in 2016. How much of this is population pressure?
Well, I think there's a few things. I think the first thing is clearly population. This is, in the last 10 years, this has been the fastest growing city by population in the whole country. But I think a huge thing is Section 24. So lots and lots of landlords are exiting the sector because they're getting taxed on their turnover. They're effectively not able to offset their mortgage interest against their rent. So it's a bit like getting your payslip, having a look at, you know, the top of it with not very much income at all, having your sort of tax taken off, and at the bottom you actually owe the government money, which is a bizarre situation.
So people are literally people that own rental properties on mortgages, selling them, getting out of the market. So the supply of rental properties is contracting. At the same time, there are more and more people coming into the country who need to rent.
It's plummeting.
Plummeting?
If we put a property on the market now, one of those houses, little three-bed houses, on average, if we leave it there for 10 days, we will get north of 150 inquiries, and we might get around half of those that convert into an application. So we often put them on for 2 days. We end up with, I don't know, net 20 applications, something like that. So there is a severe shortage. It's all of the extra red tape, it's the regulations.
Does the government understand what they're doing here?
Do you know, this is what I keep wondering. This was George Osborne, 2015. Apparently it was someone in the Treasury who dreamt this sort of Section 24 up, not being able to offset all the mortgage interest. But then they've added layers and layers of extra regulation. You know, we have right to rent checks now, which is basically they make us border force. So we have to decide whether somebody has the right to rent a property in this country. You know, there's a whole load of other legislation around sort of, I don't know, licensing, $750 to $1,000 every 5 years that you have to spend. And then there's all the sort of extra safety requirements, Legionella, and then there's EPCs.
Which, of course, is the net zero commitment, which with older properties is very, very expensive to get them to be compliant.
It's going to be thousands. It's going to be... Yeah.
But what about, you know, folk who come to Peterborough, they're working, they're paying their tax, they're now spending more and more of their income just on somewhere to live?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, this is a huge sort of... it's a landing area for you know, migrants, and there's loads and loads of picking fields around. There's loads of sort of warehouses, so it attracts people because it's the cheapest place within 75 miles of London. So local people are sort of, in many ways, they're competing with this huge.
What could be done, Mark? I mean, clearly, you know, you're not responsible for government immigration policy and the rocketing population. I won't pin that on you. But what do you think can be done to increase the supply of available housing to let? Well,
I think the first thing is, obviously, we talk about them building more houses. They've got to do something about the planning system and not just sort of talk about it. So some sort of US system where you have a zone and you sort of say, in that zone, you can build houses, and as long as you meet this criteria, a little bit like building regs, you're pretty much sure that you're going to get planning consent. I think that's the first thing. I think the next thing is this regulation. They need to row some of this lot back and actually create incentive. You know, Thatcher did this with the Housing Act. You know, she came along in the 80s and she, as much as lots of people don't, you know, like it, when a tenant doesn't pay, she gave landlords the ability to evict, to, you know, obviously keep rents in line with the market, and she created incentive, and that sector boomed. There were so many, when we came into this 20 years ago, there were so many more landlords coming in, and it suppresses rents, and it creates choice, better quality properties, you know, it's just supply and demand. It's basic economics, but somebody doesn't seem to get that, or they don't want to get it. Maybe it's votes.
Maybe you're right.
Maybe it's votes.